All right, we are live. It's a Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, and we are sitting here from seasons 52. We've got a lot on the table tonight, talking about Luka Doncic's insane stat line from the other night. Paul George is struggling a little bit in that series, as there's a few sweeps here. The Heat sweep the Pacers, Celtics being the first team to make it into the second round, and the 76ers. Do they need any fixing? Seems like they definitely do. Brett Brown's out over there. As Giannis wins the Defensive Player of the Year, we'll talk about who was the Defensive Player of the Year. And going to the NFL, we'll talk a little bit about Cam Newton getting some more reps. Damien Harris looking outstanding. And the Bruins are taking on the Lightning tonight, vying for a 2-0 lead. But before we before we introduce you to our guys, I think we will, put it out there and just talk about Luka's insane stat line. And, Alex, Frank, Justin, I don't know who wants to take it, but Luka Doncic at 21 years old, a 43, 17, and 13 stat line. Don't really know if there's many players who could be able to do that. What he was able to do, beat that Clippers team on a single-handed effort. What did it mean to you guys, the game the other night for Luka?
Well, it's really like him, Magic, LeBron, Oscar Robinson, right? Like very few players in NBA history can do all of those things. And a lot of people say that Luka's not a point guard because he's 6'7". The guy is only a point guard. How you watch his style of play. He's tall Ricky Rubio. If Ricky Rubio was 6'7" and 200 pounds, he would have been better than he was. Luka Doncic also has balls, which I don't know if Rubio has because he's just not good enough. But, I mean, the amount of players that can get a stat line like that are few and far between. And the thing about Luka is he's so young. He's 21. He's 21 years old. The guy's been able to have a drink since February. Since February, he's been able to have a beer, and he's able to drive. And he's been a professional basketball player for 6 years. He's been playing against grown men whose job it is to play basketball for money to win. And he's been playing against them since he was 17. He won a juniors championship. He went far in the Olympics. FIBA's not really my thing, but I'm sure he goes far there because he's a great player. And he's absolutely a point guard. He needs to learn how to play defense. If he does not lose weight and get himself into better shape, I don't know how sustainable his career is going to be. He's a little fat. He rolls an ankle every game, or he hurts a finger or a shin splint. And again, people are hurting him. They're trying to hit him hard because he's an oversized point guard. I get it. But if he doesn't get his body into shape, he won't be able to do this for a long time. But stellar, absolutely stellar.
I have 0.0 concerns about Luka Doncic. He is the chosen one. He is the next face of the NBA. He is going to surpass Giannis.
Zion, you mean? Zion is more box office than Giannis.
No, it is Luka's turn. Luka is the guy.
Did they help the Bucks in the playoff race? Did they help the Pelicans get in there?
Hands down, Luka is the guy. Zion is not going to be bigger than Luka. It is not going to happen. Everyone loves Zion. He's a great player, but Luka's from a pure talent perspective. What he's able to do, the way he's able to influence the game, run the point, it's just unbelievable. I mean, he's a combination of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. I don't think that there's a better comparison than combining the best assets of those two guys, at least offensively speaking, than combining Magic and Larry. This guy is a transcendent talent. He's unbelievable, and I expect him to continue to do this for years and years to come.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got to invest in a step back now, right? I mean, look at that step back at the end of that game and just what Luke is able to do. He's not the greatest shooter, but he makes them when they count. And, it kind of looks like he's moving in slow motion. He almost has this Paul Pierce quality to him where he kind of looks like he's moving in slow-mo. And then I look up and he's got 17 rebounds. I don't even quite understand it, but I think Luka's going to be the face of this league for quite some time. I think he is going to beat out Zion. I think Zion's just not going to hold up as well as Luka is going to be able to. And Luka, he was 19 years old winning the EuroLeague MVP. How did this guy slip to the 7th pick? I mean, it's unbelievable that this guy slipped to the 7th pick overall.
He was fourth overall, but still, that's 3 picks too many. Listen, everyone's made the argument, Trae Young, Luka, who was the better pick? That happened a lot early on, but let's be real here. It's Luka and it's runaway. Trae, you could argue he should be the 2nd pick. And in other drafts, Trae's a great number 1 overall pick. But you traded, the opportunity to draft Luka Doncic. I remember back in that draft, Danny Ainge had the potential to trade Jaylen Brown for the pick that ultimately ended up being Luka Doncic. And let me tell you, I wish he made that trade. And I'm one of the biggest Jaylen Brown guys on the planet. But let me tell you, that was the fact that Vlade Divac, who knew Luka's father, passed on Luka for Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley's no slouch, but he is not a transcendent talent in this league. He's a 2nd star at best, and it's crazy to imagine that NBA GMs missed this poorly on the future of the NBA.
Can we start with the Larry Bird comparisons every time a white player is really, really good? Larry Bird, you're talking about a top 10 shooter of all time. Luka Doncic will never, ever be that. Despite the game-winning bombs that he has hit, he is still never going to be a sharpshooter, an elite marksman. And if you're calling it across with Magic with Larry Bird, then the only thing you get from Larry Bird would be the shot, because scoring is comparable to those two, the rebounding is comparable, and the passing, if you're going to go Bird and Magic as your combination, he gets Magic passing, So the other thing you get from Bird in that combination for me is shooting, and he doesn't have that. It's not comparable on that. He's somewhat of a Grant Hill, LeBron, Magic Johnson type in this mold. He's unbelievable. I'm not saying he's not unbelievable, but
you named 3 terrible outside shooters, and Luka's draining long range threes.
Is Luka an elite 3-point shooter, or is he having a hot run?
I think he's absolutely a top tier shooter in this league. Yes,
he's absolutely not a top tier.
The way he shoots some block.
He doesn't shoot the highest clip from 3, but he makes threes. He makes 2, 3 threes a game.
I think the comparison between him and Bird is because they're both white. Just watching them both play, they're not the most athletic guys on the court.
Yes.
And the way that they pass the ball and get all their teammates involved, they make easy plays. Shooting, they're definitely not comparable, but I think when you watch Larry Bird highlights, how is this possible? He's the slowest guy on the court, and he's getting triple doubles every single game. I think that's much comparable, but I think Luka's his own player. He's a mix of everything, but it's hard to compare him to really anybody.
I agree. I think it's a shame that they're both white. Because we think that this, because every time there's a great white guy, we do compare him to Larry Bird. I think we did this with Kevin Love years ago. I can remember that and all that. But
we did this. No, don't be silly.
We did do this. We've done this
many times.
But I will say there is this quality to Luka where he just doesn't look like he's necessarily trying, and he just does amazing. It's like these plays that come out of nowhere. And that step back 3 the other night, it was just like, that was so cold to be able to do. I thought that was very Bird-esque.
Bird just had a way of taking over games, and Luka has that same quality. There's many players you can. You can also compare Luka to a James Harden. And I apologize if I in any way offended anyone by comparing a white player to another white player. Shame on me. Shame on me.
You're now canceled.
It's one across between Magic and Larry. If you're going across between Magic and Larry, the only thing for him to get in that baby is the shooting from Larry.
No, there's so much more. So much more.
That he didn't get from Magic.
The way Larry Bird ran the offense, the way that he moved slowly throughout the defense, and it would just make unbelievable shots. Magic didn't do the things Bird could do as a whole outside of just Magic's Bird shooting. You're being ridiculous here, Frank. Have you watched Larry Bird play a game of basketball? Yeah. Have you seen him play? Because I'm starting to doubt that you've watched highlights of the Celtics. I know you're a young gun, but take a step back.
You
Watch
got
the 80s basketball.
Right, you got
He's
86 in it.
Yeah,
He's
Frank.
on the season that is his swan song. What are you talking about?
Frank, weren't you at the '86 championship game against the Lakers in the Garden?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, it was.
And my beard was a little bit longer. All right, life's been hard on me. But look, my point is, given the comparison, because Magic Johnson's already the point guard that Luka is, it was just that given comparison. The only thing you get from Larry would be what? That he's a closer, he's a three-point shooter, sure. But he's not those things yet. He's not Larry at those things. If they shot threes back in the day, Larry Bird would be.
How many guys in the league could win that game the other day without Porzingis against the two best wings in the league? You know, as Justin was saying, two of the best wings. How many guys in the NBA could pull off that win right now? I don't feel like the list is very long. So I mean, he's up there in some insane, and the guy is only 21 years old. It's just insane. And I mean, for you to say he's not a great shooter, I mean, I get it. He doesn't shoot the highest percentage, but he's making three. I mean, he's going to make a couple threes a game. And I think he went 4 for 10 in that game. And when he's able to hit a game winner like that from 35 feet away, it's kind of hard to say the guy can't shoot.
And let's be real here. No one's creating shots for Luka. He's making his own shots. That makes it that much more difficult to sink them. Let's just cut this combo here. Frank, you lose. Move on.
I will say one thing about him, though. Frank did say is his ankles. His ankles is a problem, and it keeps coming up. And every regular season, he keeps getting hurt. It was a shock to see that he came back and played in that game and played so well. But players that have ankle injuries like that, I mean, he's just always, unfortunately, I feel like he's going to get hurt every single year. Just hope that doesn't ruin his growth in the NBA, because he could be the face of the NBA.
So with that being said, guys, we have Game 5 tonight. Dallas and the Clippers. What kind of predictions do you guys have for this game and the rest of the season, the rest of the series?
I got the Clippers winning this game.
The Clippers are going to win this series, and it's probably in 6. Let's be realistic. And I think, as great as this Phillies fan, and honestly, nothing would make me happier than to see Kawhi Leonard lose, because as much as I do like him, what he got for beating a decrepit Warriors team is way too much left. He is not the third best player in the world. He's not the second or first best player in the world, which you would have never heard about, not for a torn ACL and a torn Achilles. Like, I just think it would be nice to see, after all of he's been a very loud fish, and he finally went to a big pond, and he's there with LeBron, and I would like to see him lose. I would love, even more than to see him lose, to see Luka win, because Luka Doncic is very, very exciting, which I think we all agree with, despite the argument. I think he's an unbelievable player, but I don't see it. And I think the Clippers, now that they have to turn it on a series before they thought they would have to, are probably going to squeeze the life out of this team, because that's what talented basketball teams can do.
I don't know who I want to see lose more, Kawhi Leonard or Doc Rivers. I think it's. I would have loved to have been on the sideline watching Doc Rivers going nuts, watching Luka Doncic tear them apart. Because the games that I've seen him on the sideline, he complains about every single call, and he's got the best players always. And somehow he never gets to the finals in that Western Conference. Those Clippers teams from a couple years ago should have at least gone to one final, and they never did.
Yeah, voice is perpetually hoarse from all the whining he's always doing.
But the problem here is Paul George hasn't. I mean, is Paul George going to show up at some point? I mean, how many points a game is he getting right now? He's shooting maybe 20%.
29% and 16 points a game.
I mean, it's pathetic. He's supposed to be the second best player, and he's supposed to be a top 10 player in the league, maybe top 15. Both sides of the ball, probably top 5, and he's not showing up. And Kawhi can't do it all himself.
I think tonight we see playoff P, as he likes to call himself, step up and make some buckets. Listen, this guy is going to end up being the laughing stock of the All-Stars in the NBA if he doesn't figure out what he's doing. I mean, this is embarrassing. This is an All-Star player who, year after year, it seems, guys are just absolutely just destroying him. And not so much overall play, but there's a dagger through his heart every single year in the playoffs. And it's not like a hard. It's tough to come back from. He's got to make his stand now. I expect Paul George to have a 30-point game tonight. He's got to show some signs of life. I mean, his status in the NBA, it's definitely going way down from where the thought once was.
Yeah, I understand where it came from. but they haven't been an elite defending team since they got to the bubble. And they weren't an elite wing defending team all season, but they weren't healthy, so you can take that with a pinch of salt. But the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Beverly, fast wing defense thing, they haven't been elite at it since they got to Orlando.
No, I mean, I think we agree there, but I think if you're getting 30 points out of Paul George, this is going to be a quick series. He's definitely been what's kept the Mavs kind of in it to some degree. As good as Luke has been, Paul George has been that bad. I mean, his struggles, it's like he's 4 for 16 or whatever the other night.
In the playoffs, he hasn't always been bad, though. When he was on the Pacers before he got the injury, those series against the Heat, I mean, he was putting up major numbers, big numbers.
When Alex was playoff, he was like, well, we really haven't seen him since, 14?
Yeah. My favorite nickname that's come out of this has been PG 13%. That's my
that's
what you've gotten out of him.
I mean, we might need to have Kawhi Leonard give a motivational speech before the game tonight. I don't know what that would be like.
Let's play basketball.
Get out of my way.
Isn't the entire reason that Doc Rivers has his job because he's supposed to be able to give that speech to those players? A former player and a player's coach, the guy who accumulates talent and squeezes all the orange from his players and gets guys to subjugate their ego. If he can't come up with a pregame speech that gets his team ready when they're supposed to be the best team in the world and they're 2-2 with the 8 seed? Sorry, the 7 seed.
One of the most overrated coaches in the NBA. Pre-Garnett and Brown getting here, that team was trash.
Hey,
I think it had more to do with KG getting there and Tom Thibodeau on the defensive end than Doc Rivers as a whole. To be completely honest with you, in this Clippers team, they have always never got to the point they should be. He always has a lot of talent, and they never get there.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, Doc Rivers has always had more talent than he's been able to control, and it's always been like this guy that's supposed to go to a place and be the one guy over, be that player's coach. You know, he had the perfect assembly of talent here in Boston. Nobody was going to not be able to lead that team to a victory. They won their first year, and, you know, they're a little bit older, but I think when he went to the Clippers, he really showed that he was not able to take those guys to the promised land, you know, and I think he's completely overrated. I think he's like one of the top 20 all-time wins, and he just passed Red Auerbach all-time for wins, and this guy's only won 1 championship.
George Karl was top 5 in wins. A lot of coaches with a lot of wins in the NBA don't necessarily have rings.
I'm just saying there's going to be people making reasons that Doc Rivers is good based off that, and I don't think that.
You can say that he's one of the only coaches ever to be traded for a first-round draft pick, because we actually got a first-round draft pick, or was it a second-round draft pick, from the Clippers?
It was a first, but I'm sure it conveyed 3 years and ended up being a
like
second-round European player.
Top 20 protected.
5 years.
Either way, do you guys remember the Celtics in 08? Because from what I remember, they had a really tough time with the Bulls. They had a tough time with the Cavs. I mean, look, you're going to run into tough teams in the playoffs. It's the nature of the business. I'm still a big clip show believer. I think that they will still end up coming out of the West. Look, what LeBron and the Lakers are doing to the Portland Trailblazers right now, I mean, it's rough. But I do think that the Clippers actually have the premier talent to match up with what the Lakers are putting out on the floor. And I expect the Clippers to still be the West representative for the NBA Finals.
Can I propose a question here?
Yes.
So let's just assume Lakers Celtics get there, right? So is the story how good LeBron and Kawhi are, or is the story how much AD and PG choke in that moment? Because I think that's a wonderful dichotomy to have in your playoff series. 2 guys that simply always come up short versus what the narrative has been, the 2 best players, minus Giannis maybe, in the league all year.
I mean, I don't know what you really meant there because you said AD and PG coming up short.
So it's the two number 1 players playing well, or the two number players which doesn't shit their pants?
It's going to be the 2 number 1 players playing well because LeBron is always going to be the storyline in the NBA. They're always going to talk about LeBron over anything else going on. Yes, people will talk about it, but LeBron and what he's doing at his age is still going to be the focal point of discussion.
On First Take, they literally talk about LeBron versus Jordan every single day. So it's always going to be LeBron. And if they're talking about LeBron, and Shannon Sharp's going to be walking around with that goat man thing on his head. And that's just what they do. But I feel like ultimately it's going to be the story of the 2 guys who play well, you know, and in LeBron and in Kawhi. I think ultimately, I kind of believe what Alex is saying. Give Paul George enough shots. They keep saying they're going to give him the shots, and are telling him to keep shooting. Eventually, he's going to play well. He had a down year, but I think you keep giving him the ball, and he's going to be good enough I still see the Clippers as the most talented team in the West.
Who's guarding Paul George on the Dallas Mavericks right now? Why is he?
I believe that'll be Finney Smith and a combination of Hardaway Jr., sir.
Exactly. And we're talking about a top 10 potential player in the NBA, and he can't get some good shots off. I mean, I get every NBA player goes through struggles. It happens in every series. There's always one guy that gets cold. But I don't know. He's going to need to turn it on at some point. I mean, luckily they still have Lou Williams off the bench and Montrezl Harrell to pick up the slack when he's not doing anything. But it's a tough pill to swallow if you're a Clippers fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shifting over to another series that has been gotten people a little bit up in the air. You got Utah and Denver, and you got Utah looking really good in that one. They're up 3-1. They're up in this game here, and it looks like, guys, that Utah is going to put Denver to bed tonight. Ultimately, I'm pretty shocked in this one. I thought that Denver was going to have this series. But, I mean, there's been one player on Utah, Donovan Mitchell, that's been pretty good. I mean, what is it you guys see for in this series, and kind of how do you see it shaking out the way that it did? Why did Denver not pull up as close as we thought they would to Utah?
I'm seeing a huge lack of wing defense. Donovan Mitchell is still not that great. No one on that Denver defensive front is able to really guard anyone, and Donovan Mitchell's taking advantage. I think that against a good defensive front, if you were to put Marcus Smart on him, Donovan wouldn't eclipse 30 points even in one game.
Donovan Mitchell has big balls. Let's just say that.
Marcus Smart is not Dennis Rodman or Ron Artest.
No one on that Denver team can guard him, nor do they have the show in the will or want to guard him, it seems like. And for how good Jokic is down low offensively, he is abysmal defensively. And they're just tearing them up offensively and defensively, and it's very fun to watch because, again, I thought the Nuggets were going to take it in 4, especially with Conley out for a couple games.
This isn't a Nuggets problem. A lot of teams in the bubble have played poor defense, like the Clippers included. A lot of teams have played poor. The Lakers have been, I think, the most consistent defensive team in the bubble, which is stunning, frankly, because they're a bunch of old men, and that's just tough for them to both sides of the ball. But Donovan Mitchell has been unbelievable. And the thing, and I said this earlier before we got on the air, I think he'll never be this good a three-point shooter as he's been. But Dwayne Wade showed us if you can do it for one series, it can change your career. And it can certainly change the narrative regarding your career in the court of public opinion. So I don't think it's not necessarily. I do believe strongly that no times in the series have the Denver Nuggets showed an interest in stopping Mitchell. So that's disheartening. But I don't think that's exclusive to that team. And I think if they advance and they get another team who's really only looking to outscore him, he's going to do that again. He's been unbelievable. He's not going to shoot. I think he's shooting 50% from three-point range in the series. That will never continue. He's not that good a three-point shooter. But he's got huge balls. He's an unbelievable scorer. He's a relentless scorer. And he plays both sides of the ball extremely aggressively. He's a very, very hard-working player. He's somewhere on that scale of Brandon D. Wade. Somewhere on that scale, he's probably a little bit better than Brandon, though not the shooter. And he's definitely worse than D. Wade. But he's an unbelievable talent. He's still super young. It's been very, very exciting to see. Right as Devin Booker put his charge in for being that top 2, top 3 player under 22. Here under 23, here comes Donovan Mitchell saying, "Hold up a second."
Give him another scorer to him. And I know Michael Conley Jr. is supposed to be that guy this year for them in the backcourt, and he's had a down year. He's been hurt. God, give them a wing. I know Bogdanovich was pretty good this year, but I'm talking about another star on that team. And that team could go deep, especially with Gobert down low playing defense. The team could go deep. They have no bench except for Clarkson Jr. And again, it's fun to watch. I really hope that they continue to play well. I hope Donovan Mitchell, his stock continues to rise. Big Donovan Mitchell fan.
Yeah, and I feel like they just play really good defense, and they kind of play like a boring style where they just kind of grind you down. They don't have the personas, but They've been able to do it. I mean, Gobert isn't a guy that's really known for his scoring. He's pretty much scored like 20 points a game in this series. It's been interesting. You've seen the two guys who
joke is terrible.
The two guys who started coronavirus in the NBA have really put their charge into it and make it seem like Corona isn't something that's as debilitating as we thought. I mean, it's Donovan Mitchell with 50-point games in this series. Extremely impressive. Can't say enough about that.
I think Taco Falco put up 10 points against Jokic. Jokic is pathetic defensively. He's soft. He's a great scorer, great passer. He does everything well. He cannot play defense. It's worse than Cantor.
That's not his fault. If you have an elite player and he can't play defense, if you have Dirk Nowitzki, you go get Tyson Chandler. If you alert that Jokic cannot play defense, move him to the floor, go get some big lurch who can block 3 shots a game, go get a Son Whiteside on the cheap, and let him play 16 minutes a game. Call it a day.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think in this matchup for a series against Gobert, it's a bad matchup for Denver because their best player is being guarded by the best defensive center in the league. And he just can't. He's still scoring at a good rate, but he can't play any defense.
I also think if you take out that one game from Murray and you take out Donovan Mitchell as an individual scorer, watching both teams play offense is hard. If you're an NBA fan, if you're a modern NBA fan, this has got to kill you. I mean, if you've been watching basketball as long as I have, that it's not that bad because both teams are playing really, really hard and both teams are very well coached and you can see it every night. But boy, is there some stagnant plays and some plays where there's 7 passes to nowhere around the perimeter. And there's a guy trying to post up, but he can't because it's Jokic on Gobert. And as fun as that is for me to watch, I don't think a young basketball fan is very interested in watching 2 7-foot bodies bounce off each other without a point being scored. But it's fun. Again, it's fun to watch a brutally slow series. It's like a hockey series in basketball.
I agree. I honestly feel like some of the minutes that go by when some of those guys are on the bench, it's like watching a WNBA game. It's just up and down, brick, and it's tough to watch, but it's playoff basketball, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, well, one team that's been definitely exciting has been the hometown squad. The Celtics being the first team to make it into the second round with a hell of a win, convincing series over the 76ers, causing the 76ers to fire Brett Brown and potentially end the process. I thought it was just impressive. You saw Gordon Hayward go down, and what you really saw was Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown step up. And you're really seeing the star power of Jason Tatum. Had 28 and 15 in the last game, a career high for rebounds. And, I couldn't be happier for a guy like Kemba Walker who put up 32 in the closeout effort. He's really been a guy that's kind of been able to show that he can have a flair for the dramatic when he needs to, but he can also get it out to these 2 young wings. So they're playing great basketball, and guys, it just seems to be something like they play better basketball when Gordon Hayward isn't there. I can't quite explain it, but these guys, these young wings seem to play a little bit better. The team seems to pick up the slack. How much do you think they might miss a guy like Gordon Hayward against the Raptors?
Well, see, here's the thing. He will be missed, but at the same time, those 2 young guys, they are freed in a lot of ways when Hayward isn't there. They have the ball in their hands more. And a lot goes into Hayward being this playmaker, being this initiator for the offense. People talk about it all the time. If it's not Kemba, it's Hayward initiating. I don't see any problem with Jaylen or Jason Tatum initiating that offense, having the ball in their hands, making the right pass. I mean, Gordon, you're fantastic. You're great at what you do. But at the same time, I mean, you saw the way the Celtics played without Hayward. And the way they played all season without Hayward has been fantastic, really. They actually have a higher winning percentage without Hayward. Where I do think that we're going to see a drop without Hayward is against a team that's really stacked. I think that against the Raptors, it's going to hurt us a little bit not having him, not only on the offensive side, but defensively. I mean, it's just another guy you have to watch out for. When you're a great defensive team like the Raptors, right? It's another team that you have to keep your eye on in Hayward. Another guy you have to respect. And I think that's where Hayward is really going to shine when we're playing against those top-tier teams in the league. So I do think the Celtics are going to be hurt without him.
Now that the picks are done, I guess it's pretty clear that we can see our floor is Jaylen Brown and our ceiling is Jason Tatum. And Gordon Hayward somewhere in between that. And in the NBA, it's not about depth, but it is about your top 7 or 8. And Gordon Hayward's in that. So when it comes to the elite teams, he'll be missed. I don't think that's a question. And I think when we reach our stride, and I hope he's not here because it's expensive, but assuming he still is, his outside shot will end up being the best thing. It won't necessarily be his ability to initiate the offense. He's a great passer, and our offensive rating is good with him, and that's for good reason. Tatum's an isolation player. So is Jaylen Brown. He's also a post-up player. Marcus Smart has a super green light despite being a bad shooter. There's a reason that Brad Wanamaker runs plays when Marcus Smart is on the court. It's because they need a playmaker desperately when Kemba's not on the floor, and that's what Gordon Hayward was, and that's his value to us. But I think eventually it'll be his outside shot even more than that because, like I said, our ceiling is always going to be Tatum. If Tatum can ever make that next step, that's as high as we can go, and we'll need him to win. But we're going to be as bad as Jaylen Brown is. When he has bad games, I think we are not going to win very many games, and certainly against Philly we were going to because they didn't show any interest in coming into the bubble looking to win. But against real teams, Jaylen Brown, he's going to need to be a 20 points a guy game. 20 points a game guy. And I don't know that he can do that consistently in the playoffs. I know he's got the talent to do it, but with that awkward shot, and it's just been a little inconsistent, and I hope for it, I'm just not sold on it.
So you don't think that Jaylen Brown is a 20-point-a-game guy as he did this regular season?
I think versus elite defenses and elite defensive players, he's going to struggle. I think on top of that, without Hayward, that number becomes 25. Just like if you're Jason Tatum, you went from needing to score somewhere around 28 to 30, somewhere around 35 to 40. If you're going to be a championship team, I think we can still be Toronto without that sort of effort. But to be a championship team in the NBA, that's what they're going to need without Gordon Hayward on this particular roster.
I think we're going to miss Hayward. Like I said, Brad Wanamaker's out there. When Kemba needs a rest, when Tatum, Brown need a rest, like Hayward has the ball in his hands. It's not Marcus Smart or Brad Wanamaker or God knows who else that they bring off the bench. That's where we're going to miss him. His playmaking ability. He plays good defense. Not great. He does everything well. He doesn't do anything great. I do think, like you said, Jaylen Brown needs to be that 20 points per game player in the playoffs. But the good thing is that we're seeing Kemba all of a sudden starting to play Kemba basketball like he did prior to him getting injured in January or December of this year. If he can put up 25, 26 a game and Jaylen can get around 18, 20, we should be fine against the Raptors. I don't think it'll be that easy against the Bucks. But, again, we'll see. As long as Kemba Walker is playing this well, sky's the limit because he's a knockdown shooter. And once he gets hot, he can get us 6-9 points pretty quickly.
How can you not love Kemba? How can you not love that guy? Most lovable guy. Maybe it's just because Kyrie was so terrible. Such a albatross piece of shit. Excuse me, garbage. But Kemba is the most lovable player I think I've seen in a long time on the Celtics. I just love the guy. And then the other piece of the equation I think that you have to look at is Marcus Smart being inserted in the starting lineup. Him being out there defensively allows the other players to free up and focus more on the offensive side of the ball. I'd actually like to see Hayward come off the bench. I think that's a better role for him, coming off the bench in that 6-man role and running that second team offense. I don't know why Brad wouldn't have made that already. Unless he's just strictly trying to do it for Hayward's pride.
I love that take. Good.
I think it feels like he might lose Gordon Hayward if he were to do something like that. It's kind of like he was the guy who picked him up at the airport when he came here. It's kind of been that daddy's favorite type deal last year that upset certain guys like Jaylen Brown. That was well talked about, but I think it's something like Gordon Hayward didn't come here to come off a bench, and obviously his performance lends it to itself to, you could bring him off the bench, but I guess, you're paying $30 million for that guy and he's kind of Brad's guy. So I think that's why Brad kind of protects him a little bit.
The name of the game is a ring though. And when I said it hurts our depth, when I said eventually against elite teams is going to come back to hurt us, when you're talking about 7 or 8, and that's where Hayward is in terms of importance, or I guess he's closer to 4 or 5. We're talking about Robert Horry. We're talking about James Posey. We're talking about that one game Nate Robinson and Big Baby Davis won us. That's what we're talking about. And not all those guys start, but every team that wins has some of those guys. And Hayward's that guy. He's not going to be our best, second, third best player on the team. He's one of those guys. He's somebody who needs to steal us a quarter, steal us a game. And he can do that, but he can't do that if he's not playing.
Well, I still
And
think
that's
Patrick is the fourth best player on this team. When you, I mean, you're not sliding.
Yes.
Sure that
Yeah,
Best,
100%.
no, but most important to us winning, I think he's further down that list.
He's probably fifth with Smart, especially in this series where Smart's gonna have more of an impact. It's unfortunate because Smart be coming off the bench and guarding Van Fleet or Lowry primarily, and just being annoying and trying to disrupt them as much as possible. Where now he's starting, he's not going to be have as much energy because he's going to be playing 35 minutes every single night. Hopefully that means less shooting, which I think we all hope for, but it's going to hurt. Hopefully, I think though that Marcus Smart will have more of an impact this series than he did the prior one.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think our best case scenario here is that Brad's hand is forced when Hayward ultimately comes back. That starting five and the rest of the team will be gelled. Marcus is going to release these. We need Marcus out there to start the games. He sets the tone. There's just something.
He's also out, doesn't he?
He's got the
out, doesn't he? He comes back. Gordon Hayward's probably on somewhat of a minutes restriction. If not a direct one, a little one, and you have the out that we didn't not start it. What do you mean? It was not a full go, and we did what was best for the team. He has the out, I think, and it makes it a much easier decision. But we're still again looking towards our future as our Jason Tatum baby grows into a full-fledged superstar human being. It's going to be tough, I think, for Brad to coach him. Brad has never shown that he can coach an elite star. And he's ever since Hayward got here, started an affinity to overuse him and try to over-integrate the offense around him. And it's been blatant, and it hasn't helped our team.
Would you not say Isaiah Thomas was an elite star? He turned him into fourth quarter IT, third in the MVP. King of the fourth.
Back up three struck.
Oh man!
Get $1 million because he tore his
Thank
hip.
God we got out of that contract and the Horford contract.
Look, I'm tired of the narrative around Brad Stevens not being able to coach premier talent. He got a top job in Kyrie Irving. Let's give the guy a pass here. Let's give the guy a pass on coaching an absolute psychopath.
I feel like it's actually helped LeBron's public case now.
Definitely did.
With Kyrie, people look at him, they're like, "Oh my God, he could play with that psycho."
We thought
it was tough to play with LeBron. Now you're like, "Oh my God, how did he win a ring with that psycho Kyrie?"
We thought Tyloo was a B and a P and all these words, and we thought he just couldn't. He can't stand the heat. Stay out of the kitchen. As it turns out, you can't be on Kyrie Irving's block and not have him have a problem with you. Something on your lawn is wrong. Something in your house is wrong. Doesn't like the way you're looking at him. I've said it before. Kanye, Irving, they are one and the same. They are the same unexplainable bad human being. They just happen to be great at what they do. One's an athlete. One's a what do you call him? A producer, I guess, at this point. But either way, they're both crazy. They're both unmanageable. You can't deal with these guys. I agree with that. That's not why I say he can't coach superstars. He doesn't show the desire to ever cut his rotation down to 7 or 8. He wants the same thing Danny Ainge wants, and I say it every week. They want 6'4" to 6'8" at every position with the ability to shoot. They want this. And at the end of the day, Brad Stevens is okay with you take that three-point shot because you were open. It's in the scheme of the offense. Never mind that you're a bad shooter. Never mind that you're a bad shooter. He doesn't want to switch. If you were a hockey coach, he would keep rolling like Claude Julien did. He'd keep rolling up the same lines, despite the fact that you sitting somebody for a rotation might get through to them. You sitting some of these players, you asking more of them, you letting them play 40 minutes instead of 32. I mean, they're so strict with their minutes, and they're so they spoon feed our young superstars. Hand them the reins a little bit. And let your coaching be more of a touch. CNBA, let your coaching be the finer touch. Let it be the triangle offense. Don't make it the system that makes the team. Because very few systems win in the NBA. This isn't football or hockey.
So, guys, the Celtics disposed of the 76ers pretty quick. I mean, I think we saw a pretty fat and sloppy and lazy Joel Embiid. I mean, we saw him pretty engaged for the first couple quarters. But, we're looking at a team now with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. What's his face? The GM of the 76ers.
Elton Brand, is it?
Elton Brand came out saying that he doesn't intend to move either Simmons or Joel Embiid. And curious what you guys think on that. You think that one of those guys needs to go ultimately for the 76ers to be the best team they can be?
So when you phrase the question like that, absolutely. For them to be the best they can be, you got to pick one and build around that one because they clearly don't work together. But for Elton Brand, who's the GM of a professional sports team, you should keep these two together as long as you possibly can. and you should let them win 50 games a year, and you should let them not work in the playoffs because you'll keep your job. So from a personal standpoint, Elton Brand should absolutely be looking to keep these two together. But if you're looking to build, the process didn't work. It worked in getting you two top 12 players, but they can't play together. And then the guy seems to be the one that doesn't work quite as hard. Seems to be the one that has no desire to win. Ben Simmons wants to win. He has no desire to shoot, and that's going to hamper whatever offense he's a part of. But Joel Embiid seems content to not get the ball. He seems content to take way too many threes. I mentioned last week about how if Kobe didn't get Shaq the ball, if Penny didn't get Shaq the ball, there was an earful. If you don't get Embiid the ball, it seems like he's okay with that, and he will now make it easier for you to not give him the ball because he'll be the last of your five over half court. Because he will refuse to fight for position in the third and fourth quarter because he's not as invested. So I don't know what you do if you're trying to build that team into a winner. When you phrase a question like you do, what do they do to make themselves a winner? I think you build around Embiid because the ceiling is higher and you try to get a coach who can get through to him. But practically, I don't think either one of these superstars is a championship building block.
So the problem is the contracts they have. They just signed Tobias and Horford. They can't get out of these contracts, and neither of those players are real trade trips to anybody. I do think with Brown leaving, maybe they can change the offensive system to have Embiid actually play down the post and not the three-point line. The problem is Ben Simmons can't shoot a three-point shot or anything within 10 feet. So they have to put Embiid out. It's just a problem with – I mean, if I was a GM, I'd want to keep the two of them together because they're both young superstars. The problem is I don't see this team working. They should have signed Jimmy Butler, not Horford. That team would have been so much better because he's the only guy that actually has balls on that team. Nobody else on that entire team does. And that's a big problem, especially when you play tough defensive teams like the Celtics or someone like the Bucks.
Even Redick. Even Redick. It was poor money. You got rid of the best shooter on your team.
No, go ahead.
I just think it's poor money. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's awful money spent. It's good. And like I said, if I'm Elton Brand, I'm keeping those two together just because it'll keep me my job. They'll make the playoffs every year. Who cares if they'll come up short? I will end up with a nice record. I'll win an executive of the year that I can hang on my bookshelf. And that's the end of that. I'm already a great player in the league.
I do think if you trade Simmons, though, you could get substantially a good amount back, including some shooters to put around Embiid and build the team around him. The problem is you have Horford for 3 more years, and he's useless.
I just want to take this back a step further here, guys. This Brett Brown, not a good basketball coach. Let's be fair here.
He's got rings as an assistant.
That's fine, Frank. I don't want to hear about his assistant rings. I don't want to hear it. What you gonna talk about Thibodeau's ring too? Like, well, who's next? Come on. All right, so let's take it back a step further. Them ousting Hinkie. That crippled Sixers' chances of building something. That guy, I mean, he's a genius.
He's a genius for drafting. He's a genius for drafting two players that didn't work together.
No, he's a genius for the way he manipulated the league, and they ousted him for it. And now he's paying the price because he couldn't complete the process. And then they screwed up. They drafted Markelle Fultz when Hinkie
Isn't that the GM? Well, that Hinkie was gone.
Hinkie was gone. Hinkie was gone for that. Absolutely. Hinkie was out, and then they drafted Fultz. Clearly, I mean, even with Fultz, like they probably should have kept him and not traded him for what they traded him for. But the roster moves they've made have led them to such an awful position with the money they have on books for Al Horford, Tobias Harris. They're going to have to beg people to take his contracts. Tobias Harris is nothing in that series of value. Al Horford is a shell of his former self. I mean, I felt bad for him watching him. I honestly thought the guy was trying. He was just gassing. He was trying. He was trying. He was
dead by the end of the first quarter.
He
had so much to do. There was nothing. There's nobody else on that team helping in the winning effort.
The 76ers, go back to that draft. Even if like the Celtics didn't offer that pick to get Fultz, why the hell would you draft Markelle Fultz if you have Ben Simmons already on the team? Markelle Fultz isn't like a knockdown shooter in college. He was just an athletic point guard. You're going to put two athletic point guards in the same backcourt when you could have got a guy like Tatum, a wing player that can shoot? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. And no one's ever questioned that, like minus, where they are now. If they had Tatum, this is a completely different story. This team is a legit title contender every single year.
If they have Tatum, Embiid, and Simmons, I mean, You're talking about a hell of a team.
Not to mention that
Michelle.
they traded us for Tatum, Billy. Oh,
Guys. It still wouldn't work on the court. It still wouldn't work on the court. Jason will work with anybody who's an isolation basketball player. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons don't work together. It does not matter. No matter who you have else on that team, it won't work.
Tatum in there, and it's not going to be a different
It
discussion.
absolutely does matter. You're absolutely wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. Wrong.
Ben Simmons is not the point guard for Joel Embiid.
No,
let's call it.
Brett Brown was not the point for Ben Simmons.
You could have-
Make the kid shoot immediately when he gets so
you could have-
jack up threes.
Figure it out.
You could have Goran Dragic as the point guard, and that would work better than Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
Oh, hey, hate on Dragic.
I'm a big Dragic guy. I'm just saying he can shoot.
Yeah.
Damon Jones. Sorry, Damon Jones.
Oh,
What a
God.
better point
How
guard.
is he inserting himself
Because
into this
even
conversation?
Mario Chalmers would be a better practical fit for that roster.
Damon
Even if
Jones.
you have Embiid and Tatum, because those are the two highest ceiling guys that we've been talking about, that team still doesn't reach their ceiling because Embiid is fat and out of shape. So it's still not going to work. And the whole practicality of adding Simmons to that doesn't help an offensive flow. He is an offense. He is a LeBron in just the perspective that he is his own offensive scheme.
I wish Tom Thibodeau would go to the 76ers. I would love to see how long that lasted, but to see him push Embiid to actually
Ask Kat how that worked.
Embiid
I'll
would
ask
have,
for the Kat for that.
they would have pushed Embiid out of town.
God, talk about two divas and big women.
Yeah, I mean, so guys, do you think this is like a cautionary tale, towards something like the process? You get Joel Embiid, you get Ben Simmons, but you also get Nerlens Noel, Markelle Fultz, Dario Saric, Jahlil Okafor. You spend 7 years, 344 losses.
I take back what I said about Hanky being a genius.
Thank you. I was going to correct you. I was waiting for that to die down. Yeah.
Wow.
This is a cautionary tale for teams that think that it's genius to just tank. I mean, I feel like anybody can just tank and just lose, for 7
In the
years.
NBA, you tank. I don't know. I get the integrity of the game, and I have always understood the argument. But in the NBA, you're minus one of three guys. Who cares what you have on your team? Who cares how good your team is?
One of those years, they got Saric, too, who has really not panned out in the NBA.
You mentioned but again, you still do it. It's still like it wasn't worth it. Like they were going to be good. They're the Miami Heat right now. It's a very great organization, but those rosters who sustain success without superstars, very rare in this league. Very rare. If you are 1 out of 30 franchises, statistically speaking, lose and grab the guy. If you have the guy, you're going to be good for 10 years if you can keep him. Grab the guy. This isn't the NFL. This isn't hockey. I say it every time we talk about the NBA. You don't have the guy, you got nothing. You got nothing. So they have Embiid and Simmons. They have two different guys they can build around. It doesn't work together. That sucks for them. But they put it together. They did everything they could do to make it work. It didn't work. Now they have to make tougher decisions. But to lose and get those guys, and again, every draft in every league is going to be somewhat of a crapshoot. So I don't mind that they missed and they got Noel or Korkmaz, or that they got Dario Saric, because at the end of the day, they got Embiid and Simmons. Those are two guys you can win with. That you can't win with them together, but you can build around them.
So that makes the process all worth it?
In sports,
Two
yeah.
great guys in 7 years?
Yes. Here's the thing. The Red Sox.
344 losses for that?
Yes. The Red Sox did win for 86 years. Okay. Yes, and this is why I've loved the latter day Red Sox kind of baseball team. We've become more like the Yankees than the Yankees are, and they're more like us because we build from we're just going to be in last and then spend a bunch of money. And in the NBA, similar structure. There's no salary cap in baseball. That's why the better option is to just go pay for your championship. In the NBA, it's just tank so that you can get one of these guys. If you can get a DeMarcus Cousins before he's done, if you can get an Anthony Davis, even though he's going to be somewhat disappointing, but still make the playoffs consistently, you go get him. You go get him because there is no amount of ball movement that will make up for that guy that can get his own bucket.
Well, speaking of ball movement, the Raptors are a team that plays as a pretty complete team. They've got 4 guys that are over 17.5 points or higher in the playoffs, and Siakam, Lowry, Van Fleet, Norman Powell. But for some reason, I just don't take the Raptors as seriously, I think, as everyone else is. I think this is going to be a 6-game series. I think the Celtics ultimately come out 4-2 in what's going to be definitely a hard-fought series. no question that the Raptors have the height in someone like, they've got Marc Gasol that they're going to roll at you, Siakam, Ibaka. And I think that they definitely play well as a team, but I think this is where the Celtics' talent is that next level up, and they're going to be able to take out a team like the Raptors. Curious what you guys think around the table.
Yeah, I just think the Raptors are a perfect epitome of what I was just talking about. They're that 60-win Hawks team from a couple of years ago, right? Like, if you don't have a superstar, your ceiling is significantly limited. Pascal can get there. I want to be very clear about that. Pascal Siakam has the potential to be a superstar, somebody who can take over games, somebody who is unstoppable and can get his own bucket. He's not there yet. And if Tatum is 80% of who he can be, and if Jaylen Brown is playing just as well as he's played, if we are as good against them as we were this round, and I think a lot of that was effort or lack thereof on Philly's part, so maybe we won't. But I think if you apply pressure to their team, their scorers will not score as much. They won't have four guys doing anything. They'll have one or two a night. And I just think we'll have kind of an onslaught of talent, and their height will bother us on the boards, so they'll be in every game. But we have the talent that they don't have in terms of elite players, and that's why I think it's a no-brainer we're going to beat them once we get there, or once they get there.
Their problem is if they have Pascal Siakam guard Tatum, he's too quick for Pascal to keep up with. And then even if he can stay in front of him, who's going to be guarding Jaylen Brown then? Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG. I mean, I just don't see the Raptors being able to keep up with us in this series. I think that they obviously are a very good team, but they just played a completely depleted Brooklyn Nets team, and they're about to have a really quick punch right in the jaw in this series.
We went 3-4. We won 3 out of 4 in the regular season against them. We beat them by I think we were up by 50 at one point in the bubble. Granted, it was the bubble, and there's like it is what it is. But they have the down low presence that we don't have. But the wings, we have significant height advantages over them. And if Marcus Smart can limit Lowry or VanVleet from going off some of these games, obviously when we had Hayward, that was another significant advantage. I think this series will probably go 6 or 7. To be honest with you, I think Toronto's really well coached and they have a really good bench. In some games, one of our players gets in foul trouble, we're screwed because we're down another guy without Hayward.
If the Raptors still had Kawhi, they're my favorite this year, but they don't. And they're not going to make it past the Celtics this year.
Kyle Lowry will stop himself. Big playoff history will tell you that. That guy, at some point, will stop himself. I like Kyle Lowry. It's going to be really hard for me to say, but this is what playoff history has been for him. At some point, he's that kid whose parents were too hard on him. Like, every time he loses, it's because he was hurt or he didn't eat the right breakfast or there was a bad ref call. Kyle Lowry is a winning regular season player, but he comes up very, very short in the playoffs. And he's got a way of complaining when he does it. It was a bad call here, or I rolled my ankle. And at least when Paul Pierce did that and took the wheelchair back, at least he was nails when he came back. Kyle Lowry doesn't have a history of being nails in the playoffs. He's a super consistent, super tough, gritty point guard. I really do like him. He's in that Chauncey Billups mold, whom I love. Those are my type of point guards, but eventually he'll stop himself. You won't need to put an elite defender over there for him to be less than he is. He's less than some of his parts the more the pressure gets to him.
Yeah, that's always one of my favorite parts of the postseason every year is watching Kyle Lowry average half of what he does in the regular season. That guy's like a cup of coffee every postseason. You know what you're going to get. You know you're going to see him down. Shifting things over to the NFL for a little bit, Cam Newton has been getting some more reps, really looking like he is taking over the offense. The Patriots are kind of tailoring their offense to Cam. Curious who you guys like better wins-wise this year, the Pats or the Bills?
The Pats will win more games than the Bills and the Buccaneers. The Pats will win 11 or 12 games. And I feel that way if Brian Hoyer was the starter.
They will not win more games than the Buccaneers. Buccaneers will win 13, 14 games.
Are the games here first, and they're also the topic of the question?
No.
The topic of the question is, who do I think will win the AFC East? And that question is the Patriots. The Bills aren't ready. Sean McDermott is a very, very good coach. His quarterback's got no changeup. Even on drag routes, the guy's throwing as hard as he can. And he doesn't lay it out for receivers to run in space. He's not a quarterback who reads defense as well or has that touch. And I think their defense is a little overrated. Their defense benefits from ever since McDermott's been there. Their scheme has been great. They've been consistent. They have one good corner, and that's about it. The rest of their defense kind of plays better than they are. Yes.
No, I was gonna say they're missing their best player, and that's Tre'Davious White. He's
They
opted
have
out.
one quarter. That's it.
That's huge. I honestly feel like both teams might go 9-7. I don't think the Bills got any better. The Pats
They get better when
almost the
you get
same as
Diggs, you
that.
get better. It's just that wide receiver doesn't lead the
Yeah,
way.
but Josh Allen's throwing him the ball. Like, how many times is Josh Allen going to overthrow him? Diggs is a great route runner. He's not just a speed guy that Josh Allen can huck it up to. It's. I don't see that. I think that's the worst possible place for Diggs to go. And they don't have their best defensive player. It's going to be interesting. And the Pats, it's going to be a crapshoot. I really don't know what to expect.
Well, first off, Tre'Davious White is playing this year. He was almost going to opt out and then didn't. I do think that the Bills are stacked. I think that Zach Moss pick was fantastic. I think trading for Stephon Diggs was a great move. I mean, I could easily see both teams being right around that 10-11 win mark. And that's fully what I'm expecting out of both teams. I think Josh Allen's highly underrated. What he can do with his legs, with his arm, I mean, we got to give this on just crapping all over this kid. I think that, he's 2 years in the league. He's shown us some great stuff, made the playoffs. I think he's better than Trubisky. That's a really.
I said with the legs. He's Trubisky-esque. Trubisky's got some 20-yard runs in his career. Don't solve short.
Better legs.
Trubisky has some balls, and he is clueless.
Trubisky's just a wide receiver playing quarterback. That's his problem. He can't play the position in between the ears. And Josh Allen, I don't really think can either. But the difference is he's got a rocket launcher of an arm. Josh Allen can throw a pillow through a brick wall. I absolutely love because I'm a sucker for talent. I love Jay Cutler too. Watching him, I wouldn't build a team around him, wouldn't draft him, but they throw the ball real hard. They're Farvian. They've got cannons. But the thing is, and again, Zach Moss, I think is a good pick. Their offense will be better. I think their defense is going to continue to falter in the playoffs and play well because they're well coached. I do think Edmonds is a stud. I was sleeping. They have two players. They have a corner and a linebacker. But that's it on that side of the ball. And I look at Belichick as in the chase for Shula. And even though I would love him to tank, I don't think he'll ever do it. And I think a fully invested Belichick at this point in his career gets you 10 wins. And you mean to tell me that with the coaching he does on the special teams that they won't steal you a game with a pump block and a return touchdown? We'll be fine. I think the Bucs get off to a slow start. I think the Bills get off to a slow start. I think our toughest part of the schedule is the first 8 games.
The Bucs are more prepared than any other team in the NFL. Tom Brady's been running workouts since he signed with them. They're more prepared than any other team in the NFL. He's probably the only guy who's been running workouts nonstop the entire offseason. Let's be real. They're ready to play. The Bucs are not going to win 9 wins. They're winning at March 12. Mark my word.
10-6.
They're not winning 12 games.
10-6.
I'll let you name my first point if they win 12.
They go 0-2 against the Saints.
You heard it here first.
10-6.
Firstborn, if they win 12 games.
They're not winning 12 games. You bet them $6 million because it's a fictional number. Because they're not going to win 12 games.
Surprised me the least. They started out like 1-2 or 1-3. Like they start out slow and then they get hot later on.
They will get hot
You
later
can't
on.
just like put. It's a whole new team. I'm sorry. Like it takes some time. I know they had workouts in the off season. Like he played catch with Gronk somewhere, but. I'm sorry, like it's a whole new offense. It's going to be a slow start. They're going to get to the playoffs, but they're going to finish second in that division.
I can't wait to meet Rod someday, Frank.
Sure, like they're not going to win 12 games. Sure.
Well,
Sure.
I think they're going to win a handful of games. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to win 12 or 13, but I think they're easily going to be a team that wins 10 games or something like that. To say that you think they're going to win 9 games, Frank, I don't know. I don't see a lot of losses on that schedule. I don't see them winning only 9 games.
Every offseason,
They have a bad defense.
no, the defense isn't that bad.
No, they
It was
don't.
top 10.
Oh my God! With the second best rush defense. Well, when your team is throwing for 5,000 yards with 33 turnovers, the other team's not going to run the ball. So it's easy to have
Every offseason, there's one team that everyone's talking about. How often does that team actually work out As
We'll ask the Bucks.
Because they're in that team every year.
Why didn't the Cleveland Browns were good 2 years ago or something?
It's like every year there's one team that everyone's talking about, then they're not as good as everyone thinks they are, and then there's another team that comes out of nowhere. Like, did anyone think
The Eagles, anybody?
did anyone
The Pittsburgh Eagles, anybody?
did anyone think the Ravens were going to be that good last year? No,
Did anyone think the Chiefs would be that good?
of course.
And they won the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but the NFL, they have the
That team didn't change at all. It's the same team as the year before.
in the NFL, the playoffs are over 50% of the teams that make the playoffs the year before do not re-up. The exception is in shortened lockout seasons. Usually in lockout seasons, it remains status quo for a year. That's another reason why I think the Patriots are one of the most helped organizations with a shortened offseason, even with the lack of Tom Brady, because I think their coaching is that much better than everybody else's. So whatever coaching they get done in this condensed amount of time will lead to more positive production on the field than whatever any other coach is doing in the league.
I just feel like there's got to be some benefit to Brady leading all the workouts, like Alex said.
He's got great pictures.
He's literally been breaking the rules to be able to be with his teammates, additionally. And you can't hear these guys say anything but great things about him.
The hype train doesn't concern you.
Last week, talk about how he thinks Brady's going to make him an all-timer. I mean, I just feel like they may not win 13 games or something like that, but I don't think they're necessarily going to start slow. I think they're going to start hot, if anything.
The hype train doesn't concern you. Everything you've heard is wonderful.
It does concern me.
You've heard a lot coming out of Tampa.
But that's different than saying they're going to start slow. I don't necessarily – I think Brady's got that team probably more prepared than most teams are.
Until they get hit in the face, and Mike Evans has never been there, and none of these guys have played the big moment. I'm actually pretty convinced Tom Brady won't be the problem. Tom Brady's going to be fine.
They're playing the same.
Tom Brady's going to be fine. When he makes his seventh audible, and that receiving core has never been in an offense quite as advanced, it's going to be a struggle early on. It's been a struggle here in England in a lot of
They win
seasons.
9 games.
They've had all summer to work on it. They have the best three tight ends that maybe the NFL has ever seen. OJ Howard actually finally lives up to his potential, which you probably know. They've got two top 6 or 7 wide receivers in the NFL. They've got an unbelievable team. Their only holes on the offense were at right tackle and halfback. They filled both those through the draft. And, their defense vastly underrated. This is not
What did they work on in the offseason though? There wasn't like drills against defenses. It was like Brady going out to a field playing catch and like showing offensive routes to his new teammates.
Here's what you got to understand about it. So there's something to be said about not doing that against defense, but here's something that, in the case of Brady, and I'll back up the two of your points here. Tom Brady wants a 9-yard in cut, run at 9 yards, and he wants it precise, and he wants it at this time. So for Tom Brady to get that timing with his teammates in the summer, I think it's huge. I'm not going to underplay that. I'm not going to undermine that. That's a huge, huge part of what helped us in the past, and that's going to help Brady. That's absolutely going to be something that helps that team. And did hear the length and depth of their early season struggles that they still will be having. So, yes, it's going to help because now he knows, all right, when Mike turns his hips, that's when his break is. That's when I throw the ball. There's absolutely something to be gained from the timing that you get on that field.
Thank you for proving my point, Frank. Thank you.
Oh, no, because they're still not going to win more than 10 games. I'm just not a liar. I don't need to poo-poo your point to prove mine. He's put in work, and that will help them. It's not going to help them enough.
All right. Well, that's about time for us here on Open Season. We appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
Alex's weekly beatdown.